Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Hare Krishna. Welcome on 14th of May 2023 to ISKCON New Dwarka. Really happy to have all of you here. So we'll be reading today from Bhagavad Gita as it is, given to us by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And the chapter that I've chosen today is entitled Karma Yoga, which is chapter number 3. And this is a question which is posed by Arjun to Lord Krishna, and we know the background about this. This is the discussion which happened between Lord Krishna and Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So this is one of the several questions that Arjun had asked. And it's a very important question for all of us actually, because it's a question that is asking about all the problems in the world today. What is the underlying main root cause of all problems in the world? And we'll find a solution to that as given to us by Sri Krishna himself. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedant Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So we're reading from chapter 3, texts 36 and 37. I'll pose the question here first, as asked by Arjun. Arjuna uvacha atha kena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anicham api varushneya balad iva niyojataha. Arjun said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? This is an extremely important question and very telling for all of us. And the answer is given by Lord Krishna. Text 37. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyanam Iha Vairinam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjun, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Purport. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Or, in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust, as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If, therefore, the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities. And when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutras, wherein it is said, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. One should inquire into the Supreme. And the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as Janmadya Asya Yato Anvayat Ita Ratascha, or the origin of everything is the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the Supreme. If, therefore, lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravan, and by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. Reading the translation once again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjun, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world." So you should know the answer by now. Arjun has asked, why are we all impelled to commit sinful activities? What is the driving force? As if somebody is forcing us to commit these sins. Of course, this is our free will, but what is driving this free will? And the Lord gives the response, it is lust only. So I've divided my talk into 10 different very brief sections. And what we're going to discuss is what is lust? Where does it come from? What are the features of lust? How does it manifest within us? When does it completely take over our intelligence? Where does it sit inside our body? What does it lead to if it's not satisfied? How does it impact us? How can it be controlled? And finally, can it be spiritualized based on the example given of Hanuman and Arjun? So we'll look at the basic definition of lust. What exactly is lust? Lust and love are commonly confused in the material world. But lust is defined as a very intense desire or intense longing. But the love is the same too. Love is also an intense desire and longing. So what is the difference? According to Srila Prabhupada, he's written in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, the desire to satisfy one's own senses is called lust, while the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is known as love. That is the basic distinction between lust and love. So the desire is there. The underlying principle is desire, whether it's lust or love. It really depends on whom are we focusing this on. Is it upon ourselves or is it to satisfy the senses of Krishna? So lust basically means we care for others because we need them. There is a need. That's why we lust for them. Whereas love means we care for others, therefore we need them. Do you see the subtle distinction here? Love is very unmotivated, unselfish, while lust has a selfish motive to it. In fact, when we are lusting for something and that particular object, whether it's a living entity or a mundane object, is not able to give us any more satisfaction, that desire is gone and we reject that object, whether it be a spouse, whether it be a living entity or a simple object here. So lust is based on intense need, while love is based on intense service to the Lord. This is the basic distinction. So based on this, what is the material world moving on today? Is it lust or is it love? Lust, exactly that. We should all know by now, the 99.9% of the world is cycling on the basis of lust, whether people are lusting for material objects or houses or cars or whatever it is based on lust. So the second question is, where does it come from? What is the origin of lust? The origin of lust is when we as living entities come in contact with the mode of passion. There are three material modes of nature, and those are goodness, passion, and ignorance. And we all want to rise above the modes of ignorance and passion. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says we have to even rise above the mode of goodness and enter the mode of sattva guna, which means pure goodness. But here it is said, when we contact the mode of passion, that love for Krishna is transformed into sense gratification or self-gratification, and that passion is actually causing our lust to develop very, very rapidly. And the analogy which is given here is that of milk, which comes in contact with either lemon juice or sour tamarind, and it immediately becomes yogurt. So the underlying ingredient in milk and yogurt is the same. It's milk, but you cannot call yogurt milk. It's very similar to Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva, right? We say Lord Shiva is very similar to Lord Krishna, just as milk is Lord Krishna, yogurt is Lord Shiva. They are both derived, the underlying principle is milk, but one is very distinct from the other. So lust is defined as the perverted reflection of love of God. It's perverted reflection. Does everyone understand the meaning of the word perverted? What does it mean? Some of you nodded your head. So what does the word perverted mean? Reflection or very falsified or twisted reality. And it's mentioned in the Gita how the banyan tree is like a perverted reflection of the actual tree in the spiritual world. So what are the characteristics of lust? How many of you have got your fingers burnt in a fire? So what is the nature of fire? It's always burning, it burns everything. Lust is exactly like that. It's like fire, it burns everything that comes in our path and it is never satisfied. So we don't want to go like that, in that direction where nothing is satisfied. Lust is a symbol of ignorance. And as long as that lust is within us, we will always be in ignorance. And unfortunately, we do not want to be in ignorance because we will not be able to understand who we are, what our relationship with Krishna is, and what our goal in life is. So we really need to get out of the cycle of ignorance. How is lust manifested? Where does lust sit inside our body? Can anyone think about a very suitable answer? Yes, Prabhu? In the heart and the mind, absolutely correct. It is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada, as Prabhu has said. It is manifest in the gross way in the mind and the senses. But in a subtle way, it's even present at a more dangerous place. And that place is very close to the soul. So what am I talking about here? So lust can be present in two residences. One, gross mind and sense, and second, subtle, which is very close to the soul. And that is our intelligence. And intelligence is very close to the soul. So the moment the lust inhabits our intelligence, since the intelligence is so close to the soul starts identifying with the material body, acquires a false ego, goes into illusion, and that's when we forget our purpose of life. So intelligence is directly very, very proximal to soul. And that is why it is very, very important that we control our mind and senses. And there's a whole chapter how to control the mind and senses. Arjun is asking Krishna, how does a dhira, how does a sage control his mind and senses? How does he sit? How does he walk? It's a very interesting chapter. So Srila Prabhupada has given analogies later in this chapter where he has said human beings are like fire which are covered by smoke. So human beings have a little bit of Krishna consciousness, but we need to remove that smoke and rekindle our fire towards loving Krishna. Likewise, the dust on the mirror is an analogy given for birds and beasts, and the embryo being covered by a womb is an analogy given in terms of trees. Why trees? Trees have a very unfortunate position. Why? Because they're always standing and they're tolerating the onslaughts of nature, the rain, the heat, the wind, and they cannot do anything. The birds and the beasts can actually fly away and they can walk away, but trees are destined to be situated there. In fact, it is mentioned that people who have extremely lusty desires, particularly with regard to the physical body, and engage extensively in sexual gratification, are actually designated to turn into trees in their next lifetime and enjoy standing where they are. This is written there. Third aspect is, how does lust completely take over? Lust completely takes over when our propensity to serve the Lord is completely converted into a propensity to serve ourselves, completely. And that is the biggest misfortune of a human being. That when we are coming so close to Krishna, suddenly the lust takes over. And rather than pleasing the Lord's senses, now we are completely interested in ourselves only. And that's when lust completely takes over our intelligence. And I told you what happens when our intelligence is eroded, the soul starts identifying with the material body. And like I mentioned here, lusty intelligence does influence the spirit soul, and the spirit soul starts thinking in illusion that I am getting happiness by interacting with material objects. But there's a problem with that happiness. What is that problem? We get a lot of, sorry? Absolutely correct. It is temporary. That happiness is flickering. It is temporary, it's not real, but we feel this is our real happiness. Unfortunately, it's not the real happiness. But that soul is now entrapped because our intelligence is covered by lust, unfortunately. And then 2 or 3 more points here. What is the outcome of lust when it is not satisfied? There's a whole description given by Lord Krishna here. What happens when lust is not satisfied? There's a whole hierarchy, very scientifically explained, what happens when the lust is not satisfied. In fact, it is written in the purport. What happens when you're craving something and you don't get it? What's the natural reaction? Anger. Okay. When we see an object which interests us, like a gulab jamun or an ice cream or whatever it may be, we develop an attachment for it. I'm just giving you a very bare example here. We develop attachment. Out of that attachment, lust develops. Now, when that lust is not satisfied, as you said very correctly, anger manifests. And anger is one of the worst emotions, it is mentioned. Why? Because in anger, we say and do things that we regret later in life. Remember, and in anger, we can destroy our relationships also. So one has to be very careful. In fact, in the Gita, it is mentioned there are 3 gates leading to hell. And all those 3 gates are open. What are those 3 gates? Lust, anger, and greed. And there are 3 other vices within us, along with lust, anger, and greed, known as envy, illusion, and madness. But lust, anger, and greed are the actual 3 gates of hell. So what happens when we get angry? What happens to our sense of intellect? What happens to it? We become delusional. That means we start believing in things that are not really there or become speculative. When the mind becomes deluded, there is bewilderment of memory. And when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, we fall back into the material world. So do you see this? This is so scientific. It all starts from the senses. Senses not satisfied, lust, lust not satisfied, anger, anger, bewilderment, memory, intelligence. Finally, the soul is completely lost and we fall back into material nature. So it all starts from lust not being satisfied. And in fact, we have a choice. Since lust is at the platform of mode of passion and wrath is at the platform of mode of ignorance, we have a choice. We can move upward to the mode of goodness, or we can move downward to the mode of ignorance and become angry. The choice is ours. Krishna has given us the free will. And Krishna is not going to interfere with our free will. Krishna has given us all the free will. It is up to us what decision we take. So the underlying principle is we need to control our senses here. And like I mentioned here, when senses are controlled, the mind is controlled. When the mind is controlled, the intelligence is clean and clear. And when intelligence is clear, the soul is not identifying with the false ego or the material body. And then we do understand our constitutional position in our life. So having talked about all these negative points about lust, can we use lust and anger in Krishna's service and greed in Krishna's service? There are very, very negative principles here. Lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, madness. Can we use these in Krishna's service? Yes. So everyone agrees. Can you give me an example? In fact, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gave an example, if you remember it. Who used anger in Krishna's or Lord Ram's service? Hanumanji. He was angry and he burned the whole city of Lanka. And that was in anger. And that anger was not seen negatively by his followers. That was seen in a very positive light, that he chose to use his anger to burn the city of Lanka, right? Any others? Arjun. Arjun was very meek and timid. He did not want to fight. But Krishna incited his anger by showing him and speaking the 700 verses. Not exactly 700, he spoke quite a few, but there's some questions here. And he spoke the Gita where he incited Arjun that it's your duty, don't run away from the battlefield. You'll be called a coward. So you as a Kshatriya have to fight. And Arjun finally decided to fight. Can you think of other people who used their greed and their anger and their lust in Krishna's service? Kubja, exactly. Kubja was serving Lord Krishna by supplying him sandalwood paste, something so simple as sandalwood paste, when Krishna and Balaram were entering Mathura. Just because of that little service, supplying Lord Krishna a little bit of sandalwood paste, which is very dear to the Lord, by the way, he became indebted to her. And essentially, Kubja used her longing for Lord Krishna to serve him. So that's an excellent example. Thank you so much. So there are a lot of examples where lust and anger and greed can be spiritualized. But now I want to show some examples where Vedic personalities who showed lust actually lost everything. They completely became self-destructive. There are a lot of examples, but I'm going to start with just a few here. One example is Ravan. Ravan was lusting for whom? Mother Sita. Mother Sita is Krishna's energy. Lord Ram's energy. Nobody can touch his energy. And who instigated Ravan describing Mother Sita's glories and beauty? Sarupnakha, his sister. And Sarupnakha herself was lusting for someone. She was lusting for Lord Ram. So what was the outcome of Sarupnakha and Ravan? Both of them were destroyed. So this is the power of misused lust. One was lusting for the Lord's energy. One was lusting for the Lord in a negative way. There are other devotees of the Lord who are in love with the Lord, but that's transcendental service. We're not talking about the gopis here. They're at an extremely high level. So Sarupnakha had her nose chopped off by Lakshman, and Ravan was killed by Lord Ram. Likewise, we have Vishwamitra and Menaka. Vishwamitra is a very, very sagacious sage who is known for his austerity. But Indra actually sent a heavenly denizen by the name of Menaka to disturb his austerities, because Indra was afraid that if Vishwamitra gains all these powers because of his austerities, he's going to take over the entire demigod's kingdom. And Indra is very afraid that nobody should nobody should steal my kingdom from him. So he sent this very beautiful maiden, Menaka, to disturb Vishwamitra. And Menaka was actually successful. And so this is showing you the power of lust, how lust can actually destroy people's austerities and can disturb the mental equilibrium of people. There are so many examples, but the one that I like to discuss quite a bit is Diti and Kashyap. Kashyap is a very, very, very exalted sage, Kashyap Muni, and his wife is named Diti. And it's mentioned that Diti was craving to have a union with her husband, which is fine. Husband and wife union is fine. It's not illicit. But when she approached her husband that I want to have a union with you, he denied her, saying this is an inappropriate time. It was the time of twilight, neither day, neither night. It was twilight. And he said, let's wait a few moments, because during twilight, Lord Shiva is out on his walk with his entourage of ghosts and pishachas, all his entourage. And this is not an appropriate time for us to unite. But Diti could not wait. And what happened? Because the time for the union was inappropriate and she did not follow her husband's advice, she gave birth to two demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And both were killed by Lord Vishnu. Hiranyaksha was killed by Varahadev and Hiranyakashipu was killed by Lord Narasimhadev. So the point I'm trying to make here is lust, if it's misguided and used in a very negative way, it can only lead to self-destruction. There's absolutely no other way. There are examples from the Vedas, there are examples in our personal life, there are examples everywhere. So it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when will lust destroy us. And there's so many other examples also, but we won't have time to go through it. And so this, hopefully everyone knows that lust is the underlying principle. And I just want to end on a little positive note here. Who is known as the god of lust or love? Kamadev. Kamadev, main purpose, what are his tools? Like Indra has a thunderbolt, Vishnu has Sudarshan Chakra. What are the tools of Kamadev by which he pierces people's heart and invokes lust in them? Bow and arrow. It is said his bow is covered with beautiful soft flowers and he has 5 arrows. And wherever he shoots his arrows, the feeling of love or so-called lust is inside it. So one day, this is a very, very sweet pastime. Dwarkadhish, our Dwarkadhish, was entering the city of Dwarka from his other duties. And so many people were lined up on the streets, all the Brahmins and all the warriors, and they were welcoming him with song and dance and showering flowers. And there was beautiful jubilation in the kingdom. And it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 11, there's a beautiful description that the queens, the goddesses of fortune, were standing on the balconies of their palaces. They did not come in person to welcome Lord Krishna. That was the level of chastity in that age. In fact, they wanted to embrace their husband, but they could not because they were very, very shy. And during that period of time, the ladies would be actually, kind of in seclusion. So they sent their sons to embrace Lord Krishna. And that's how they embraced Lord Krishna indirectly. So at that time, Cupid came. Cupid came to see how he would actually bewilder the queens of Dwarka by invoking lust in them for Dwarkadhish. And it is mentioned that Cupid himself became completely bewildered by the queens of Dwarka, because the queens of Dwarka had so much love and they were glancing at Dwarkadhish with so much attractive glances, and they were very shy that Cupid himself bowed at the lotus feet of these queens and gave up his bow and arrow. In fact, it is mentioned that Krishna can only be won over by transcendental service. Krishna is Atmaram. Nobody can win him over. There's only one thing that can win him over, and that is pure love. But that love has to be done and manifested in the form of transcendental service. And this is exactly what was done by the queens of Dwarka, the goddesses of fortune, and the gopis of Vrindavan. All of them have pure love for Dwarkadhish or Lord Krishna. So this is showing you that even the demigod of love is defeated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a very sweet pastime here. So I just want to end just for the next 5 minutes because it's Mother's Day, and the position of a mother is the most glorious. In fact, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in his book that the closest relationship that comes in terms of defining love is the relationship between a mother and a child. That's the closest relationship. Why? That love that a mother bestows upon a child is completely selfless. For those of you who are mothers, you know how many times you got up in the middle of the night to tend to your children while they were sick. You completely gave up your sense of comfort, your sense of health to nurse your child. And so that is why that relationship, that love comes closest, is very, very close to coming to the love we have for Lord Krishna. So I'm going to read you an aphorism by Chanakya Pandit, who is a very great philosopher and politician. Adau mata guru patni brahmani rajapatnika dhenur dhatri tatha prithvi saptayata mataraha smritaha. Translation: one's own mother, the wife of the guru, the wife of a brahman, the wife of a king, the cow, the nurse, and the earth are known as the 7 mothers of a man. So please try to understand, we don't have one mother. All of us have 7 mothers, and we have to respect all the 7 mothers equally. In fact, sadly, 2 of the mothers are being heavily exploited today. Of these 7, which 2 am I talking about? Earth and cow, exactly. Earth and cow. The earth is heavily exploited today, lots of digging and drilling and oiling and deforestation, and the cow is being slaughtered. So that is why we are seeing Kali Yuga actually progressing pretty fast right now. Changes in the weather, people fighting and people killing each other. So this is the progression of Kali Yuga. I shouldn't use the word progression, it's actually degrading much more. So just to give you an example here, I will ask you questions here really quick and we'll end the class here. So in terms of the real mother, give me an example of Krishna's real mothers. Please louder. Devaki and Yashoda. In fact, Krishna regards all the ladies as his mothers, essentially. He is the child of everyone. He is the parent of everyone. He is the friend of everyone, essentially, right? There are 5 rasas. Then the wife of the guru is also regarded as a mother. Who is the guru of Krishna and Balaram? Sandipani Muni. And what is his wife's name? Sumukhi. Sumukhi. And Krishna and Balaram, while they were being educated in the Guru's ashram, regarded Sandipani Muni's wife as their mother. Third is the wife of a Brahman. Brahman is a scholar, Shuchi, very clean. And one of the most friendly Brahmins in Krishna's pastime is Sudama. What is the name of Sudama's wife? Sushila. She is also regarded as a mother. Fourth is the wife of a king. And that is Lord Ram's kingdom, where despite being dejected, despite being derided by Kekai, Lord Ram never rejected Kekai. He still accepted Kekai and Sumitra as his mothers. Kaushalya was his real mother, but he accepted Sumitra and Kekai as his mothers. Kekai, who sent him to exile for 14 years, who was so envious of Lord Ram, he had no envy towards her. He regarded her as a mother. So that is the power of Krishna, of Lord Ram. Fifth one is the nurse. Basically, a nurse is someone who in this language is someone who gives milk to a child. And who was that in Krishna's pastime? Putana. And Krishna gave her a supreme destination. Putana came to kill Krishna, but because she gave milk to the Lord, he was indebted to her and he regarded her as a mother. And he gave her liberation. And essentially she was liberated. So Putana, although she's not the appropriate example here, but there are various nurses who are regarded as mothers. And sixth one is earth. Why do we regard earth as a mother? What? She gives us all the vegetation, all the water, everything she gives us, the soil. Without Mother Earth, we will not be having any vegetables or fruits. And finally the cow. Without Mother Cow, we would not have any milk. In fact, everything from the cow is pure and sanctimonious. What to speak of milk, even the urine and the cow dung is absolutely purifying. So I just want to end this here by glorifying all these 7 mothers that we have, not just our own biological mother, but all the 7 mothers. And if I had to ask you, in mother, what is the topmost quality, or rather the top two qualities, which is actually exhibited by a very, very important personality in the Vedas, what would be those two qualities? There are a lot of qualities mothers exhibit, but these two qualities decorate a mother's heart and decorate a mother's mind. Unconditional love, absolutely correct. Any other words? Yes, please. Selfless service? Sacrifice. Thank you so much for all these answers. All these are correct. But the two words I'm going to use in connection with the personality I'm going to talk about, and then I'll end the class, is compassion and tolerance. And the example I want to give you is Draupadi. Everyone knows Draupadi is the wife of the 5 Pandavas. But Dronacharya's son, Ashwathama, killed Draupadi's 5 sons, little sons, when they were sleeping. What could be more painful for a mother than to see the death of her sons? And Arjun vowed to bring Ashwathama and kill him. And what did Draupadi do? Her sons were killed by Ashwathama, and Arjun said, I will bring Ashwathama and put his head at your feet and I will kill him because he's killed your children. What did Draupadi do? Draupadi said, please don't kill him. That was a completely bewildering statement. And she said, save him, release him, do not kill him. Why? Because I don't want his mother, Ashwathama's mother is Kripi, the wife of Dronacharya. I don't want his mother to go through the same pain and grief that I am going through. So this is the very high position of Draupadi. Instead of killing Ashwathama, she said, release him, because if you kill him, even Kripi will be devastated as I am devastated. So I don't want another mother to suffer as I am suffering. This is the level of tolerance and compassion of Draupadi. Of course, we can't compare ourselves to Draupadi. She's at a very, very high level. So this is just to highlight compassion and tolerance and unconditional love and selfless service and sacrifice are all attributes of mothers. And they are attributes of fathers too, by the way. But fathers manifest their love differently. And the attachment of a child to a mother is very special because the mother is nurturing the child in the womb for 9 months. And the 9 months are not easy. It's not a joyride. It's very, very traumatic. It's very traumatic at every month. There's so many different things going on physiologically in the body, and only a mother knows. So all glories to all the mothers here, all glories to all the women here, and all glories to all the Prabhus here. Essentially, I want to glorify everybody, not just the mothers, and all glories to all the devotees of Lord Krishna here. So we will end our class here. I apologize, I went a few minutes over. If anyone has a question, I can take just one question because I'm sure everyone's hungry here. Any questions at this point? Yes, Mataji. Correct. To control our senses, completely control our senses. In fact, it is, if you read the Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami, 3 things that need to be controlled are the tongue, the belly and the genitals. They're all in the same line. It all starts with the tongue. Tongue is used for eating and tongue is used for speech. And if we don't control our eating, we'll all fall sick. Likewise, if we don't control our speech, we'll cause a lot of damage. And then of course, the mind controls everything, but they're all in the same line. So the root of all problem is our inability to control our senses, both the 5 gross senses and the 3 subtle senses. So we really have to pray to the Lord because the Lord gives us the power to control our senses. And that is why association with the devotees is so important, because when we see the lifestyle of devotees, we naturally start inculcating those values, which means slowly we can start controlling our senses. We use our senses in the service of Krishna. We don't withdraw our senses. We're not withdrawing our senses. Like a tortoise, we don't withdraw our senses. Rather, we dovetail our senses in the service of the Lord. So we just bring Krishna in the center and remove ourselves from the center. It's very simple. We don't reject anything. Srila Prabhupada never rejected anything. He used everything in Krishna's service. Typewriter, microphones, cars, everything he used in Krishna's service. He was not attached to anything because he was using them in the Lord's service. Likewise, we can use everything, our qualifications, our jobs, our cars, our houses, our families, use them in Krishna's service, but do not get attached to them. The moment we get attached, our intelligence is diluted, unfortunately. I hope that answers. Thank you.
I like how you answered.
Thank you so much. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai.